Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the um, Community of Practice in Cyber Defense for the CAE New and Early Career Faculty Initiative Workshop Series. This month we have a little bit of a change up from a particular workshop. We're going to be doing a panel here. We have some great panelists, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a minute. We're going to be talking about hybrid and online teaching. I know this is something that has been very much requested from the group that we have, as well as, every time we go to an event, they're like, can we talk about all these different formats and modalities of teaching. I know this is my first semester where I'm teaching a course completely synchronously online, so I'm very excited about this conversation and the panelists that we have on today. So, just one little thing about kind of the logistics. If you want to drop questions into the chat as we go along, we will answer those all at the end. We have a couple questions here for the panelists, and then we'll leave some audience QA for the end here. We're going to go ahead and get kicked off. Just really quickly, my name is Paige Zalepo Flores. I'm at California State San Bernardino. I am a professor. I teach programming, introduction to cyber, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be leading the panel today, asking all the questions. And I'm going to turn it over to Yair to introduce himself. And then we'll go to Pam, and then Rene, and then Satch.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Yair Levy. I'm from Nova Southeastern University. Most of you probably know me from the community of practice. I've been teaching hybrid and online since 1998. I'll talk about that. Um, Also teach on campus, of course. I teach variety of things over the years. Started in telecom. Actually, my background is from telecom and networking, and moved into system development and other courses. And in the last, I would say, 15 years, teaching cybersecurity uh, courses. Thank you. Bye.
So my name's Pam Schmelz. I'm the dean for our schools of information technology and business, logistics, and supply chain at the Columbus campus of Ivy Tech. For those of you who are not familiar with Ivy Tech, we are the largest singly accredited community college in the nation. We have 19 campuses. So basically, the state of Indiana has only one community college, and that's Ivy Tech. And I see some of my colleagues there. Hey, Fumi. Thanks for joining. Um, so I've been teaching online and hybrid also a long time, for 17 years, and really a couple of years before that when I was just kind of like an adjunct. Um, I like it. I teach all of the things, but not programming. So cybersecurity topics like business continuity, networking, intro cyber, cyber ops, Linux, all of that kind of stuff.
Rene? You?
Sorry about that. I didn't know it was my turn at this point. Hi, everybody. My name is Rene Tejon. I'm an adjunct professor at Miami-Dade College and Broward College in South Florida. I teach Python programming, cybersecurity, and network concepts, and also IT. My background in IT is, data analytics, but also, hardware and software management. So I've worked as a engineer before in the past. I graduated at Nova Southeastern University. One of my professors, Dr. Levy, is actually here with us today. And I'm currently just passionate about learning and helping out with the community. So that's why I come to these things. I like to help others learn, and I like to learn myself.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here and join all of you today. My name's Satch, and I'm a professor at Touro University, and I teach courses in networking, computer hardware, so CompTIA plus material, and looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts on what it's like teaching online and hybrid, the unique challenges all of you face with all of your materials. And I know I have my own, and I discussed them briefly with Paige last time. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And since we are the new and early career faculty group, we do try to keep it kind of like we have experienced faculty and then we have the new and early kind of part of this conversation as well. And I know we have a mix on the call today as I was kind of poking through. So let's get us kicked off. I'm going to ask the experienced faculty this first question, and then Renee and Satch, feel free to jump in after this. So what's your favorite part about teaching in these particular formats?
Pam, go ahead. I'm feeling uncomfortable going before you. Go ahead.
So what I like about the online and hybrid formats is that it allows students to attend school when they otherwise might not be able to. Um, Before like Zoom was a thing, I always told my students in my classes, hey, if you have a schedule change or, if you car breaks down or you don't have a babysitter, just message me and I'll send you a Skype link. Back in the day, I was kind of a rogue agent here doing these things. I'll send you a Skype link and I'll make sure you don't miss anything, right? And I had students who like their work's changed and they come to me and say, hey, we have to drop the class. I'm like, why? Well, because my schedule changed and I can't attend every week. I'm like, I don't care. We're going to record this session. You can dial in online, ready to go. And, it's all about retention of the student and making sure we can get them the education they need. So,
Yeah, I'll second that. Absolutely flexibility. That's the biggest thing. So I'm thinking the years back, 1998, 1999, we had WebCT. I don't know if anyone remember. And then we were using for synchronous Centra at the time. Then later on, GoToMeeting acquired them and built their platform from that. Um, the flexibility, the capability to allow students, like Pam mentioned, is the biggest thing. We have folks who are in the military. We have students who are single mom or single parent. All of the challenges that they're going through. We have people who are going through some very difficult times in their life. And so that's where really the ability to do both synchronous or asynchronous and with the capabilities to record is phenomenal. So I've been recording my classes for many, many years, and this has been really a blessing for many of the students.
I guess it's my turn to go next then. I'll go before you, Satch, right? Um, so, for me, teaching is about the impact. I mean, I really enjoy explain. I like it when, okay, so students see things that are complicated and complex. They look at something, and I like to see their reaction when I can explain it in a way that just clicks, right? When it just kind of makes sense, and they're like, they're no longer intimidated by the subject matter, and then they're able to understand things. And then and the other part of what I like to do is I like to push them to create new knowledge, to kind of see that they can use this in the real world. So I try to associate a lot of my instruction with the way things work in real life, and then have them participate in that instruction with me. Because if they're just sitting there listening to a long lecture, although that's fine and okay in some class settings, in other class settings, like in the ones I like to give, they need to participate because then they can apply their new knowledge into the real world setting. I'm trying to help these students know what the reality of what they're facing ahead of them, and also to realize that they need applicable skills, not just knowledge. They need to be able to retain this information. So I always encourage things like note taking in every single class, doesn't matter what subject. I encourage them to repeat to me. The next week I'll say, okay, let's discuss what happened last week, and I have them walk through it. And it's a little weird for them at first, but then they get into the habit after about a couple of weeks. They start to get into the habit. I don't have to ask them anymore. They just come to class. Okay, I got something for you. And it does work. You just have to also have a positive and energetic attitude. If you just come in without that, it kind of brings them down as well. You got to set that mood for them. So that's my way of and why I like to teach.
Yeah, completely echo your statements, Rene, Bam, and Yair. I'd also say I think it's a good way to teach students that this is the environment that mimics the real world. So when they get a job, when they find their first big break, they're going to be seeing a similar situation where they have to learn things by looking things up or by speaking to someone in a Zoom meeting or in a Teams meeting and having them help them figure something out. So I guess that aspect of it instructionally is a good representation of going forward, how things are going to look like. So that's one thing that I really like from the student perspective. And, you know, there's obviously all the other advantages. You can do it from anywhere, anytime, and you can record the session and people can go back and see it. And one thing that I've seen happen a lot, even on a day-to-day basis, is where you teach a concept or you teach a student how to do something and they forget how it was done, but the recording's right there and they can go back to it and watch it at their own time. And I could use my energy and my time focusing on you know, issues that are new and novel rather than addressing a question that was already answered in the recording the previous class.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I found it super helpful that I might have a concept that I have to cover in another class that somebody's like, well, it was in a prereq and I don't really quite remember it. And I'm just like, I have like a 10-minute recording, go and watch it as many times as you need. So it really kind of creates like a curriculum toolbox for me to just like pull out of. And also just being in the CAE too, there's a lot of recordings that are out there on different topics. And I'm like, hey, this guy's like an expert in this. And this, he has taught this. Here's like a 10-minute video. And then I'm going to supplement it with my explanation and how it fits into what we're covering. So yeah, no, I agree with all of those. Okay, so moving into, I think some things that we talked about a little bit here with student engagement. In these online courses, both sync and async, how do we manage that kind of engagement? And I'm going to pose this to Rene and Satch first, and then Yair and Pam, if you'd like to join at the end there. Whoever wants to.
All right, I'll go first. That is definitely a unique challenge. Just to get specifics, Paige, you're asking how do you deal with a class where you're teaching students in person as well as there's a cohort of students that are online?
Yep, all the different formats that we could have in our classroom.
Well, I teach a graduate class where that's exactly the situation. I have about 6 or 7 students that join through Zoom, and then another 6 or 7 that are physically in front of me. And so one thing that I really like to use is the focus mode feature in Zoom. And what that does is it allows everybody to share their screen, but only the instructor can see it. And so if it's an assignment or if it's, you know, a short quiz, you can see what each student is working on and you know that they're engaged and they're present in the class because things are moving on the screen. And so, you know, I like to use that as a proxy for engagement because that's really the concern you have with the students that are not in front of you. So yeah, those would be, I guess, my 2 cents on teaching a, you know, hands-on class in both of those formats.
I can't speak for hybrid situations. I do teach in both modalities. So I do teach in person and I do teach online, but not at the same time. However, I do have ideas for how I would do that and approach it. I will say that when it comes to my online students, I do the exact same thing that as I do in person. So I'll give the same assignments. The difference is with the in-class students, I'm able to be right there and they're more comfortable with asking questions. And of course, I can walk up to them and help them. Sometimes they're not capable of using computers you know, adeptly, right? They're not adept at using certain technologies. So I can help them in person. Whereas online, they might be a little bit more, you know, scared of actually speaking up. So I try to break them up into break rooms online and make them into smaller groups. I find that they're able to ask me personal questions a little bit easier when I'm in a break room with them. Now, if I were in a hybrid situation, I would use this software called Class. It's a front end for Zoom. It allows you to upload your work, and of course, anyone can access it. They can access it from in class or online, and I think this would work really well for both situations. Sometimes you just have to be a really good storyteller, and you have to get them all to just submit their work to the LMS, and then you'll have to grade it later, but have them participate in some kind of activity. For example, if I were to come up with something simple, let's say I'm having everybody create a resume, I will have them do that, follow along with my instruction, whether they're online or in person. And then, of course, they can upload it and I'll grade them and give them feedback, where then I'll give them an opportunity to fix their mistakes and then resubmit the work again so they can get a good grade. So you really got to find a way to incorporate the ability to give them feedback and give them a chance to work it back. So I think that's really all I can think of for how I would approach that situation.
Yeah, I just remembered one other thing from Rene's comments when it came to helping students navigate certain software. At the beginning of all of these courses, if there's students joining via Zoom, I always ask each one of them, how many of you at home have two screens? Because you need one screen to see what I'm doing and to follow along, and then you need another to be able to work on at the same time. And sometimes if you're at home and I'm not aware that you don't have two screens, students tend to move a lot slower because they have to switch, go back and forth. So that can complicate things.
Pam and Yair, what experience have you guys had kind of moving through this particular kind of challenge that we've seen?
Go ahead, Pam.
So there's a lot when you're in a hybrid situation. So all of our IT courses at Columbus, I choose to offer as what we call Learn Anywhere, also called High Flex. So in the classroom, students dial into Zoom or don't show up at all, treat it as an online class, right? I don't really care as long as they're doing their work. But when you have some people in the classroom and some people on the line, you also have to be managing your chat window. So you have to be a master of windows, right? And so, I'm monitoring, in fact, on this call, like I'm monitoring the chat over here to make sure there's no questions going on. And then whenever I see a question or something pop into the chat, I will then announce that to the class and say, oh yeah, so and so said blah blah blah, and we're gonna talk about that or answer the question or whatever happens to be. With online, the key for online is feedback and response time. You have students online, of course, going to wait till the last minute, right? So you have to have a very quick response time. Although I've learned to wait a little longer because a lot of times they'll figure it out on their own. I mean, I will reply to a student many times within 5 minutes of their message, right? Um, but I've learned to back off a little bit because they do figure out sometimes. But you've gotta address their concerns. And because we teach very technical classes, right? If they're stuck on something, they can't move ahead. So feedback on assignments is also essential. So timely feedback. I usually get grades turned around in 24 hours, except now that I'm a dean and I am teaching one online class. This week I only got grades done. They're due Monday and I got them done yesterday. So it was a little longer, but still, pretty good. Um, then, back to the hybrid, sometimes the topics we teach also are very boring. And I put myself to sleep sometimes teaching some of these classes. AWS Cloud Practitioner comes to mind. So you have to be, aware that if it's putting yourself to sleep, then it's probably putting them to sleep too. So, do as many little online quizzes as you can. Okay, we're going to pause. We're going to have a discussion about XYZ. And that kind of stuff too. It is hard. We do know that students learn much better in the classroom. And I'm still trying to figure out how to get them back into the classroom more. But that's been a challenge. One more point about discussions is a lot of times with online students, faculty members will not participate in weekly discussions, which I think is a little bit ridiculous because if they were sitting in your classroom, you would be talking to them. So why are you not participating with those discussions, online? So I'm also a firm proponent of participating in those discussions that the students are having. So all of those different types of engagements is what I do.
So It really depends. In my perspective, it depends on if we're talking within the class session or outside the class session. So all mention different things, and there are techniques to handle the in-class session, and but I think there is also challenge after class or before class. So I'll talk about those two things. During class, I've been teaching online, hybrid, um, mainly hybrid and online because all of our on-campus classes, they have a sister online section. So what I do is like Pam mentioned, managing the chat area, the ability to engage the students is sometimes difficult. And what my style is during my sessions, live sessions, I try to tell stories. I'm very much engaged with my students know that I'm engaged with FBI InfraGard. I'm engaged with other groups, with the U.S. Secret Services and the Miami Electronic Task Force, other groups. So try to inject stories that are relevant to if we're talking about authentication or we're talking about, the McCumber cube or whatever. So try to tell mini stories. I found this over the years that for online students, it's edutainment, if you will, right? To some extent, you want to be engaging them in an entertainment to some extent level, but inject the content of the class within that, right? So that's my style, right? And it worked over the years. I'm getting some reasonable, maybe Rene will disagree, but I get a reasonable, professor evaluations on my classes. But now let's talk for a minute. I want to discuss the issue of outside the class because that's a big issue with over the years I've learned. Um, Getting the students to actually be aware of what's going on every week is important. I bombard my students at the beginning of the week. On our Canvas site, I give them a whole list of what is going on this week. When is the live lecture? When is the anything due? What are the things that you got to do this week? And if you have, by the way, if you failed to review and you did not attend last week's lecture, reminder, here is the link. And I also send every week what I call the weekly reminder. During the whole week, the whole term, every week, usually on Monday, all of my students are getting a weekly reminder. And in that weekly reminder, I give them tips for the upcoming week. If there is an enlarged due to do in the lab, if they got to spend this week 5 hours instead of 2 hours in the virtual lab, then I tell them this week you got to dedicate more time to the lab. And so kind of giving them some tips and tricks to how to go by this upcoming week. And I think this have been worked well. I usually get very good feedback on the weekly reminders and the posting. So not easy, but that's where my tricks are at least.
I think I remember you talking about this in another thing, and I've adopted this in my class. I actually got feedback from two of my students that are like, the reminders are very helpful because I can sit down, I know what I have to do, and I'm good to roll with it. So
And
cool.
it's a checklist for them. I
Mhm.
tell them the first session of the class when I go over the syllabus, I say, when I send you the weekly reminder, treat this as your checklist.
Mhm.
At the end of the week, you got to check everything. If you did not check everything, then
Mhm.
you're
Yep.
missing something.
Go back through. Okay, cool. Okay. So since
You're
we're
actually you're actually the reason that I actually started using Outlook, believe it or not, because you used to tell everybody in my class when I went to your class, you were like, put everything into your calendar, make sure you know exactly what to do. And then I started finding out how useful that was. So it was actually because of you that I started doing that, and I still do it today, and it works great.
Mhm. Cool. Yeah. So since we kind of talked about the challenges of assignments and discussions, we're just going to move on to that next question for all of you guys who have the list. So in your experience with synchronous, asynchronous teaching, what approaches have worked best for managing student assignments, since we've talked about that a little bit, so that students complete them independently and meaningfully? And I think this kind of touches on maybe a little bit of what we were actually talking about before we got started on our panel with, we have this big elephant in the room of AI. It's accessible to students, they're using it. So I'm going to ask Pam and Yair first for their experience in getting people to do it independently and meaningfully, these assignments and discussions.
So it's an interesting question. I've always been of the mindset that because we're in IT, we have to know how to use our tools. I've never liked closed book, proctored exams, hate those things. I actually don't care if students cheat, kind of, because they'll be found out eventually, right? But I want to um, make sure they know how to use the tools. So I've experimented with so I'm gonna put AI to the side for the moment, but in my normal classes with our online and ace our synchronous classes, we use a standard statewide course shell. So all the assignments, all the materials, everything are the same, whether you're taking online, learn anywhere, face-to-face class. The difference then is in the modality and how you're interacting with the students, right? So there's that. But the other thing that I've recently come across is a couple of years ago, some faculty from the Sellersburg campus came to our campus and talked about ungrading. And ungrading was a very interesting thought to me because grades are actually really stupid if you think about it and don't actually promote student learning because all they care about is doing the grade. So they're more likely to cheat and to find other resources to just get the grade. So I've experimented with this, and I think our IT classes are very, very good for this because you have labs you do, right? And so I've done it in both Learn Anywhere and online. And I have created my syllabus that says, okay, if you do these things, this is like an A. If you do these things, this is a B. And I had mandatory things they had to do and then separate things. And the feedback from the students was they actually learned because they knew they could take the time to um, do the work and think about it because it wasn't all about the grade. And then I even had them grade themselves at midterm and final, and pretty much they were dead on with what grades they would assign themselves. And that is the research that has come out with this. So I really like that. I'm kind of doing that in my class I have right now with the labs. I'll go through and pretty much if it's done, they'll get the 100%. But if there's something that's amiss, um, I give the feedback and they can resubmit. I allow resubmissions. We have deadlines, but I also don't really worry about it because again, I don't want to harm the student if something gets in their way of getting their assignments turned in. So I will regrade assignments and not penalize for late work. So yeah, that's a little bit more grading, but again, my goal is for the students to learn the material. Um, with AI, I also encourage students to use AI, and I'm trying to embed actual AI assignments in to have them use it, so they can see how it can be used in the class. In my Linux, not the Linux class I'm teaching now, but in the previous Linux class, there's some scripting in there, a little bit of scripting, and I'm not a programmer. I'm a terrible scripter. It's not my strength. So I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity to bring in AI and say, okay, put this assignment into AI, and then let's iterate. So I would actually do this live in my Learn Anywhere class, and I'll do it. I'll bring up the AI, I'll put in the thing, and then we'll run the script. And I'm like, hey, what's wrong with this script? Did it actually do what we wanted it to do? Well, it didn't. So let's iterate. So the more we can work with students and AI in the classroom, one, the less mysterious it will be, and the more they'll learn how to use it properly. That was kind of random, but anyway, there it is.
So In general, I was talking about before the issue about the weekly reminder and all that. This is obviously critical, but I think some of the assignments that I'm giving lately are moving towards incorporating AI into almost everything I ask my students to do. So, this reminds me way back in the late 90s, beginning of the 2000s, when we had faculty from accounting and other sides of the college saying, "Oh, the internet is killing the students' mind, and we shouldn't let them use the internet for any of the assignments," right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Now we're thinking 25 years later. What do you mean not using the internet for assignments? You kidding me? I mean, you want them to go and look for microfiche sources. Come on. But so I see this as a, the will turn again, and we're having a new tool, and some people are saying, "Oh, don't touch, don't let them use AI," and I'm like, "You kidding me? Let's talk in 5 years, 10 years, right?" And but I encourage them to actually do meaningful assignments with AI, not, and this is where the creativity as a professor is to think, how can you use AI to actually get them to think? Not just to spit out some information back at you. And I was actually in the process of uploading one of my assignments. I will share that in the chat as we're progressing. I'll post it on my website, so it's easier as a PDF, so it's easier for you guys to grab it. But the idea is to teach them how to use AI for the capabilities that we want them to learn. Okay, that's really the key thing. And that is really on us to spend the time to think of. This is not an easy thing to design proper pedagogical assessments and assignments to have them use AI to really be in a meaningful way. But we can do it. This is what we want to experiment and tweak it over the years. What I found out is almost every semester I'm tweaking my assignments. Every semester. So there is a set of assignments that will automatically progress because I'm using a virtual lab that is attached to Security Plus, and Security Plus is changing, right? I mean, like anyone else that is teaching anything else, like Cisco and whatever other, Networking Plus or any other of those, we have a feature, a piece of our class that is the lab that will progress as the content of those professional certifications or vendors are adjusting. But then there are other assignments that we want the students to actually be more critical thinkers, rather than just learn the basic, networking, basic, SOC activities or Wireshark or whatever tool that we want them to learn. And those are the assignments that we want to really get the AI embedded in them to get them to be more critical thinkers.
I concur. The reason being is the mantra that I give to my class, I teach software development, is artificial intelligence is not a crutch, it's a tool. So I give them challenges where, like, for example, one thing I'm challenging my dual enrollment kids to do is create a tracking mechanism for a sounding rocket from Wallops Island. So they're tracking altitudes of this rocket going from point A to point B. So they're like, wait a minute, how am I going to be able to do it? We get that deer in the headlights look. And so this is where I would authorize artificial intelligence to give them the proverbial gravity assist. Here's the hook. They are not to do artificial intelligence until they get my explicit authorization with a vision why they would need to use it, very vivid. They wait for my authorization, and I would either A, provide input to help them. That's when I attach it with a no. Or B, if I can't find any input, they're red and free to use artificial intelligence. This way, it primes them to use AI as a research mechanism. Now, they're going to come into bumps in the road, like you're saying. AI is not perfect. It's based on an algorithm with no human intuition. So this is where they would need to bounce prompts over and over again. The next axiom I give them is you're not going to get the answer the first time. You can forget that. You need to plug it in until you're precise. That's how I spin it.
Yeah, one of the things I want to say that I just shared the link, I uploaded the PDF of my assignment. This is a graduate level assignment where I infused Gen AI into for cybersecurity. So feel free to, plagiarize as you see fit. One of the things that I want to touch on the issue of authorized versus not authorized. A while back, I think about maybe a year and a half, 2 years, there was a university-wide discussion at Nova Southeastern, and we talked about the capabilities of professors to decide on their own for their own classes the volume and power of AI integration. And what that meant is also adjusting what we call the students' declaration, on what they're using or not. So, when it comes to the students signing at the end, those disclaimers, what tools they were using, what help they were using, we had to change those because in the traditional one that the university has, it's none of this is allowed. So we actually tweaked that. So just to mention that. I think we need to think critically. How do we engage the students to use those tools in a smarter way? That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. Satch and Rene. Satch, I know this was your idea. So
I don't mind going first if you don't mind, Satch. So I want to touch on a couple of things that I heard Pam say, Dr. Levy, and also I think it was John, right? So I have a kind of a little comments about the things that you guys said, and then of course my thoughts on that, how I approach AI in my classroom as well. So with Pam, when I first started teaching, I was like most new adjuncts, and I do want to make sure everybody's clear about that. I am an adjunct, which means I'm not a full-fledged. I am a full-fledged professor. I just don't have like as much privilege as a regular professor, and I don't have like a schedule that I can work 15 classes like other ones. But I do work at multiple colleges to kind of fill in the extra work that I need. So like most people who are probably either attending this class or most of us out there who are professors, we are adjuncts and we are limited in what we can do with the curriculum. So we do have to follow a certain, we have to make sure that the students learn a certain set of competencies in order to graduate from a class. How we teach them that, that class is up to us. So we do have some freedoms, just like a professor would have. So when I first started, I looked at the way that Broward College, for example, grades on my Python course, for example, right? And they're very harsh about the way they grade things. Just the simplest mistake could cost you massive points. You can go from an A to a B just by making one mistake on a thing. So I tend to be a lot softer on the grades, depending on my own judgments for things, right? So I don't penalize heavily. I thought about doing a pass or fail, or maybe intermediate understanding, mastery understanding type situations. What I found though is with some students, at least in the undergraduate level, they take advantage of that. What they do is they tend to wait till the last minute to complete their work. So you do have to set deadlines, period. It just doesn't work if you leave it open to them. I've tried it, and next thing you know, I'm stuck with so much work at the end of the semester, and then I'm the one that takes the heat for that. And that's not something you want to do. You need to set those deadlines. As far as like late work and stuff like that, yes, but they, I want them to be reasonable about it, right? So like, for example, I'll let them do 2 days late work if the if the platform allows it with a little bit of a penalization. Just because here's the thing, when we're preparing them for the workforce, they have consequences if they don't get to work on time. They have consequences if they slack on their deadlines for their work. So we have to kind of instill those certain habits in the college setting for them early on, because they have to transfer that to a real setting. Of course, if somebody tells me they're sick, I understand most people don't pay for doctors. So I go ahead and give them, and I say, okay, I'll excuse your absence, or I'll extend an assignment. I give them one of those a semester. But then anything else, they have to have a documented proof that something went wrong and they could not do the work. Like, for example, I had a student literally this week showed me his phone. He dropped a dumbbell on it. I was like, okay, so he couldn't use the MFA, which means he couldn't do his work. And I asked him, I said, you had a whole week to do the work though. And I said, you waited till the last day. And he admitted, he said, yeah, I'm sorry, Professor, you're right. I waited till the last day. So I said, I'm gonna give you your one break. I said, but no, don't do this again. He said, I'm sorry. I noticed that they really get honest with you when you're not so hard on them. As far as AI use in my Python course, I mean, like what Dr. Levy said, I am incorporating it. And it's like what he said. They used to say, don't use computers in schools. It's a bad idea. AI is going to be here, and we're going to have it incorporated into our educational system. It's not, but what is it going to be used for, right? Let's put it this way. One of the most difficult things students have, and as myself, since I was a student as well, you know, trying to understand complex topics. The professor doesn't have time to tutor every single person in their classroom, and then the tutors themselves a lot of times are not always as as adept or as knowledgeable in the subject as they need to be. So having a guidance, a tutor, a way to kind of learn things and break down complex concepts really does help, and that's why AI is very useful. Now, I do tell my students that they can use AI. I don't. Unlike what John says, I don't tell them only when I say so, because I feel like when you're too militant or when you're too disciplinary, they tend to pull back. They rebel a little bit. That happens. Now, some people are going to listen to you, but they tend to pull back a bit. I want them to not follow my lead in the classroom, but participate in the learning process. I want them to tell me how they want to approach this topic. This is what we're learning. This is what you need to learn. How do you want to learn this? Like, I get them to talk to me about how they want to approach the learning process. Including the students in the learning process is going to give them some ownership over that learning process, and also in the outcome that they have. So I actually do get students to help me with the actual learning process. Now, I know how to teach it, but I want them to participate in it. And you'd be surprised the most creative ways. I've had people gamify a lot of the lessons. I've had people do trivias. I've had people do group projects. I've had a lot of interesting ideas, and it does help me when I'm teaching to have a holistic view of how students actually want to learn, because they tend to be very similar. They do. But like I said, you definitely want to encourage them to use AI, but in the right way, and steer them that right way. Because when they're in the real workforce, they're going to use the internet to find answers. Like, for example, when I give them an exam or quiz and I'm like, it's open book, they're like, really? Like, yes. I say, in the real world, if you have a problem you need to solve, are you going to figure it out only, or are you going to look for the answer? You need to know how to research. That's one of the things that makes a good student and a professor, is researching the answer that you need, finding it yourself, not asking me a million questions. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have to say on everybody, and that's how I teach it. I hear a lot of noise in the background. Sorry. So is it Satch? You wanted to say something? I'm sorry. I know I probably took a little bit more time than I should have.
I think everyone covered all the points that you could possibly cover in
Sorry.
trying to solve the challenge of helping students stay independent with their learning. I actually have a short little anecdote about Wireshark class that I teach for traffic analysis. Before we even got started with teaching the platform or talking about the platform, what I had students do was download the software on their own computers and have them try and do some research on the interfaces that they have available on their own computers. And we did have VMs that were accessible through the class, but I wanted them to have different scenarios so that we could all compare them in class. And what that did really was, we had students with MacBooks, we had students with Windows computers, some students were using the VMs, is everybody got a different answer. And the way that they got that answer was by taking a screenshot of the Wireshark interface selection option. And they all had different lists of interfaces. Now, I know, those of us that have MacBooks, myself included, are going to have, maybe like 15 or 20 interfaces, a bunch of them being virtual for a bunch of Mac OS services that are necessary for Bluetooth, for my AirPods and whatnot. And so, rather than me going through each of these and telling them what it is, having them find out independently and using AI, I think that was a unique example of being able to do both. It touches on that creativity that Rene and Yair and Pam were speaking about earlier. So, yeah, it is a challenge for us also to remain creative, and a good challenge. I think it helps us stay sharp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really making the students want to learn all of these things and not want to go to those tools and just get the grade. Making it very clear that these things are really important for where you want to go in your career. I think sometimes even just saying that, I know I've gotten some students be like, oh wait, like packet tracer, this is actually going to be something useful. As I'm like making them do it. And I had a very similar experience with, I'm not going to make them use the VM. They have a MacBook. They chose to have a MacBook. Now let's figure out what looks different on, a Windows machine and a Mac. And, the tutorials you find online might not look exactly like that, but how do we think through using these different tools? Okay, cool. So we have some time to take audience questions. I'm going to make these last two a little rapid fire. So the next question we have are there certain cybersecurity topics that might be better suited for one of the formats we talked about? So I'm going to ask each one of you to give me one cyber topic that you think would be really good for an online format, whatever format you would like, just specify. And then one that you think works pretty well for hybrid. And I'm just going to go down the line here. Whoever looks more ready in my small viewing window. I'm going to go with Yair because he's smiling at me.
Always smiling, trying to. Fully online, I would say probably cases. So I talk about some critical cases that happened, SolarWinds, Target breach, some classical cases that we've seen over the years, and they keep on repeating similar ones, same threat vectors, etc. So case studies are usually easier to teach online. When I do hybrid, I try to engage a little bit more everyone around. So that may be, looking at authentications or some other concepts that I ask them to then do some hands-on activities. So
cool. And then I had Rene next. You were my next biggest smile.
So yeah, so my cybersecurity classes, I definitely focus on phishing attacks. I focus on social engineering a lot. I actually have students share stories. I have them practice it in class. We talk about the different ways that they can be fooled, because let's face it, I mean, yes, there are a lot of parts of cybersecurity and network security and all that that's important, but the ones that they are going to face, the ones that they're actually going to be exposed to, those are the things that I want them to have a good understanding about and how to protect themselves against. So I talk about, what is it? Cookie session hijacking. I talk about phishing attacks and emails. I actually, when I get the phishing attacks, by the way, the emails, I save them in a folder and I showed them to them. So I love getting them because I get that. And I just got another one today, actually. Apparently I won Bitcoin. I don't know why, but I showed them this. And then I talk to them about the impact that it has when they fall for these scams. I talk about remediation tactics that they can take in case they fall victim to something, let's say identity theft, where they'll need to contact the IRS to protect their the refund money, right? So they'll need to get a IP pin. Then they'll have to contact the credit bureaus. I told them about checking their credit report yearly to make sure that nobody's adding something that shouldn't be added there. So I love to focus on those things because those things I think are the most relevant when it comes to security. So I tend to assign that a little extra time compared to the other things.
Keep them engaged with discussions when you're in these different modalities. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing
Correct.
too.
Yeah.
And just to add to it, recently I added to my class about social engineering, also deepfake and voice cloning. These are big issues. If you're not covering it in your social engineering sessions, go ahead and take a look at them. There are some
Oh yeah.
interesting
We
YouTubes
we talk
about
about the calls.
voice
Yeah, we talk
cloning.
about that.
Exactly. Very interesting. Very interesting. So the idea of how to now identify those, how to remediate, those are the challenges, right? That we need to use AI and other tools. So
Yeah, because the young people, they're buying things through Facebook Marketplace, through Craigslist and stuff, and they don't realize that they can get screwed over just by making bad decisions, right? So I tell them, if somebody's asking you for money, you need to contact them. Tell them to hang up the phone. You contact them or give the money in person. Never do this through a Cash App or anything like that. Because they're getting more and more creative, and they can sound exactly like your family members, just like your friends. They don't need much to do this.
Yeah, very applicable to our students. Okay. Pam, I had you next.
Yeah, so I what I like, I think hybrid topics are that anything that requires group work or more communication is better to do in like the hybrid format than the asynchronous format, because students just aren't going to form their own teams. So business continuity, I've had really great hybrid courses with that. Learn Anywhere, project management stuff, anything that's just keyboard based, like it can be anything. But when you have group work, I think it's really good to have that as a hybrid, because then you can at least force the people into some sort of a group and make them do the work.
No, absolutely. And you could be there to like monitor it to make sure they're doing it. I've started monitoring all the group work. I can also help out too a little bit. Sometimes they need to learn how to communicate. Okay, cool. And Satch to round us out for this one.
For me, I would say the fundamental concepts. So, computer networks, so the computer network plus security plus, there's a lot of vocabulary in there. I think it works to teach that in a fully online or even an asynchronous format. I agree with Pam. I think anything that has group activity, you're gonna kind of need them to at least be there with you, so that you can manage interactions and grease the wheels where needed. Like one example would be business continuity, as Pam mentioned, any sort of tabletop exercises, or even group presentations.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So this is our last one. So audience, get ready for some questions. We have like 5 minutes for questions. What's one piece of advice you'd have for maybe a new teacher that's being thrown into these formats that maybe never even took a class like this? They're brand new to this and they're just getting started. So whoever wants to go first, I will open this up.
I actually would like to go first on this one. I think this is great. Because I had a fun experience as being a new professor, and I got to tell you, I got a few pieces of advice. For one, don't throw all of your knowledge at them. You'll find that you'll run out of time so quick in the classroom. You don't realize how short it takes for you to get through your lesson. So you really got to learn how to be emphatic when you speak. You got to learn how to be a good storyteller. As far as how do you teach something you don't know? Listen, I'm pretty good at my subjects. I was a straight A student, literally 4.0 and everything. But sometimes I look at the material that the students are learning. I'm like, well, I didn't know this, right? So there's a couple of ways you can do this. For one, you can use AI to make your life a little bit easier. You throw the content that you need to teach to the artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT. I personally like DeepSeek. It allows more entries, and you can say, I need you to summarize this in a natural and plain speaking way, and just summarize it and give me key topics and words that I need to know. Skim through that, right? Use it as a way to kind of glance at it. Matter of fact, I even tell the AI to use emojis and use separators, so that when I'm talking, I can look at it. But what if I don't know the topic? Well, I can research that topic, real quick before a classroom. You kind of need to be one step ahead of the students. But as you teach the classes more than one time, you will get more and more comfortable with teaching it. You have to keep learning. As a professor, learning never stops. We're always learning. That's what makes us good at what we do. It's not that we know everything, is that we're really good at continuing to learn, and we enjoy that process on top of that. But you always got to speak slow and emphatically with your students. You got to keep it, you got to keep it simple. Pause in your talk a lot. Say, hey, anyone, you can't say, does anyone have questions? They will never raise their hands. You should say, hey, you, David, can you tell me what you think about this? Put them on the spot. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to pay more attention to you, because they're like, he might call at me. I like to do this sometimes in my classroom. And they laugh. They think it's funny, but speak slowly, stay ahead. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No,
Just jumping in quickly, I would say if you're teaching online or hybrid, one of the advice that I'll give you is be precise in your documentation. Your syllabus should have a schedule section that also helps you stay on track. I use the sections from my schedule to actually build my weekly reminders and to post that on the homepage of the course. Assignment guidelines. Oh my God. I shared one with you all here. As precise as you can and perfect it over time. So, fix typos. I just noticed the link to the DCWF is wrong. Well, it's the old one. There is new one that just happened in the last 2 weeks. So I need to update that, right? So updating your guidelines, your assignment guidelines, instructions should be very precise, because when you are asking something, it's like prompts, right? If the prompt is very short, you get very general answer. If your prompt is a half page long, you get a very precise answer. So the idea is to be very precise in your guidelines for any of your assignments and what you're asking the students to actually do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a contract between you and the students. They need to know what's due each week. What you have to have everything listed, and yeah, it could get updated throughout the semester.
Cool. I'm gonna let Pam go next.
Yeah, I was going to say copy somebody else's course. Find someone who's taught the course before, copy it. If you don't have statewide course shells like we do at Ivy Tech, that's going to be your best and most quickest way to get going.
You can always look on Clark.
Exactly. There are full courses there.
Yeah, I give my students a course schedule on top of putting it in the syllabus. That way they can't say they don't have it.
Cool. And Satch.
I would say that I would encourage you to pray. Do it every day, do it multiple times, and I'm joking. Well, in the beginning, I would say relax your convictions. For me personally, I had a lot of convictions about how I wanted to teach, what I wanted to do in each lesson, and how I wanted the information to come across to the student. And I think if it's material that's completely new and unfamiliar to you, you might need to relax your convictions and use the aids that you have at your disposal. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Use decks, labs, or vendors that are already in place for you. And talk to an instructor that has already taught the course. And I think it was Mike Kesani that said that it takes about 3 times of teaching a course till you're convinced that you know every aspect of it. And I think that he was on to something there. Except I would also echo Rene's statement, which is that you have to keep learning, and even after the 3 times, information is going to change, it's going to evolve, and yeah, good luck, and it's a very exciting journey and very rewarding.
So before we take questions, I do just want to thank our panelists so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. This is going to be posted on YouTube, so if you came a little bit late or joined a little bit later, then it will be available so you can watch all this great conversation. And thank you to all of our participants for joining. I'll open up for questions. If anybody does have to drop off, because I know I said we were going to keep it to an hour, please feel free. But again, thank you so much to Satch, Pam, Rene, and Yair for joining us today. It was a great conversation. And I know I learned a lot, and I hope everyone learned a lot as well. Got some good resources. So thank you guys. I'm going to keep recording through the question just so if there's some more good conversation, we have that. But yes, thank you, everybody. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and the rest of your day. So are there any questions from the floor? Or do we cover everything? Can my panelists believe that if we actually covered everything? I've never been to a panel where we cover everything.
There's always more to cover, you
Oh,
know.
yes. Okay, cool.
And I like what Saj says. Yeah, what you go in thinking you're gonna teach like it's gonna change. You get more relaxed and better at teaching it, and you learn to be softer. You know, that way you're not scaring people away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's I was always told Blair Taylor told me that she's like you just stay 1 week ahead and she's like if you try to plan too far ahead then you're gonna get too ambitious and you're gonna try and cover too much and it's gonna get there, but if you stay 1 week ahead you'll be able to take what you learned from the previous week, integrate it immediately and keep learning from there. So that was some of the best advice I got.
My boss at Broward actually did that type of thing to me. He's now the associate dean. He was my professor at Broward for my undergraduate, and I was like, aren't I gonna have like someone help me learn how to teach this? Like, shouldn't I have like somebody with me? He's like, no, you'll do fine. You're gonna mess up. You'll do fine. And I was like, but what if I mess up royally? He says, no, you'll do fine. He says, go to class. He's like, go. He's like, he says he was given a book and he had to stay 1 page in front of the students. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And now he's an associate dean for this college, and I'm like, and we talk all the time still, and he just makes jokes. He's like, how you doing? I said, much better.
I do need to drop because I have a call that started at 1.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sorry we
Take
went
care,
over.
everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Guys.
Goodbye.